Good afternoon, all the centers. Before I start, let me introduce myself. My name is Arunesh Singh, and I come from Prayagraj, Uttar Pradesh. I hope you know Prayagraj. Earlier it was Allahabad. Today I am going to start the module Indian economy. And I'll start with the discussion on syllabus, right? Because understanding the syllabus is the first step, okay? Now, if you go through the syllabus, prelims as well as mains, prelim syllabus that is given by UPSC, they have said everything in so short that it is very difficult to find out ultimately what you have to study, right? Yes, in mains they have given few topics to you, but still there are gaps. And I say this because if you just go through the syllabus and say 5-year question papers, then you realize there are so many questions. They seem like out of course, right? It is because the syllabus is always indicative. Right? It is not like our graduation syllabus. Like in graduation, you know, in most of the universities, it is unit-wise syllabus, and from every unit you get one question. So if you just prepare 5 units out of 10, you get 5 questions, and that is why I say graduation is very easy. But here it is not like that. They can ask anything. So first requirement is to understand how to visualize the economy, because this is all about Indian economy, because the syllabus is what they say, Indian economy is the heading. Now to understand this, I will just go for a small discussion so that you may realize what all comes under this topic. Okay? You see, what is the most important objective before any economy in the world that we want to achieve? Most important objective. You may say different things, but I believe that most important is growth. And almost every week there is some news related with this. Our own agencies are predicting growth rate. There are international agencies, sometimes IMF, sometimes World Bank, other agencies, some rating agencies. They are just saying that Indian economy is expected to grow at this rate or that rate. It means the maximum news you get about is growth or growth rate. But the question is, what do you understand with this word? What is growth? In simple words, increase means growth, but increase of what? Right? Now, if you are talking about, say, agriculture, so last year we produced crops. This year we produced 3% more. So we say agriculture growth rate is 3%. Same is true about industrial sector or services sector. So when we say growth in the context of economy, growth means increase in production, and the rate at which it is increasing is called growth rate. So most important thing is growth. Now when we say a particular sector, we talk about that sector. But when we say growth of economy, it simply means all the sectors combined. So when you say agriculture plus industry plus services, this is economy. When you talk about a particular sector, it is sectoral growth rate. Okay? Obviously, if growth is the most important objective before any economy, and growth means increase in production, anything that is related with growth is important for your exam. And that is why in your syllabus also, there are so many topics written, they are related directly or indirectly with growth. So there are few topics related with agriculture, right? They may be explicitly said, like if you read your syllabus, they say land reforms is one topic. They say food security, buffer stock. But ultimately, if you try to correlate, everything is directly or indirectly related with production in agriculture. But what is missing there in your syllabus? They have not mentioned anywhere, they have not mentioned the word green revolution. That is very interesting. They talk about land reforms. Land reform is something that is more historical than present. I am not saying it is zero today, even today we are talking about land reforms, but it is more historical in nature. That topic is there in your syllabus. But the present issue, increasing production and productivity, and that is related with green revolution. There is no mention of that in your syllabus. But it does not mean they are not going to ask questions, right? Now, if you want to increase production and productivity in agriculture, obviously, we talk about better qualities of seed. We are discussing the issue of sustainability of agriculture. And when we say sustainability, environment is involved, balanced use of fertilizer is involved. Now, government is promoting organic farming. Nothing is mentioned in your syllabus. If we want to increase production in agriculture, irrigation is the most important input. Only 50% of our agricultural land is irrigated. Rest is rain-fed. And we have big schemes like Pradhan Mantri Krishi Sinchai Yojana. So do you believe that they will not ask question on irrigation, right? Then we say food security in India. Now, food security involves two things. One is availability of food, means that is related with production. But then another equally important aspect is affordability of food. We may have huge stocks of wheat and rice and coarse grains and other things, but are they affordable to masses? Now, maybe rich people can buy anything, right? But what about the middle income group? For them, we have to make it affordable, and that is possible only if the prices are under control. And you know, prices are under control if there is a balance between demand and supply. Again, indirectly, it goes back to production and productivity. Then what about the poor households? For poor households, even the normal price is beyond their capacity. So we have a public distribution system. We have a National Food Security Act passed in 2013. To make all this happen, we have a buffer stock system. For that, we have Food Corporation of India. Now, some of these things are mentioned in your syllabus, but why I am just giving you the words, these are actually the topics about which we should be alert. And generally, you know what happens, few topics, few issues, they are dormant in nature, means nothing happening. So for that year, maybe that is not important. But then suddenly something happens. maybe a scheme announced by the government. And whenever this has happened, my experience is that the same year they will ask one question in prelims that will be focused entirely on the scheme, particular scheme that was announced during the year. In mains also, they may ask you to analyze the whole issue. So if you just think like this, you very easily get what to read, what you can ignore for this year, right? As far as important is concerned. Every year before the exam, I get so many messages and calls from my old students. Sir, what is important? I say that first thing is that everything is important, right? So when you are a beginner, you have to study the complete course. Once you have done that, and just before the exam, what you have to revise to focus more, then is the issue of important only. So whatever happened during the year, those areas are more important. So there may be the classification like more important and less important, but there cannot be any classification like important and not important. In fact, everything is important, right? Similarly, industrial and services sector. From time to time, we get policies from the government. Like today, there is a lot of focus on Atmanirbhar Bharat, right? Earlier, we were talking about Make in India. Then there was another word, Made in India. Now, as the government, every department of the government today is talking about Atmanirbhar Bharat. That is something related to industry and services, right? Or maybe some manufacturing policies announced by the government, or maybe some sectoral policy comes, right? Then it becomes important for the current year. This is how we have to go, right? And this is why we say that newspaper reading is important. Why? Because from newspaper only you understand what is happening, right? But first we have to understand the basics of all this. That I will do in the class itself, right? But yes, Dehradun is suggesting one more topic, production linked initiative. Now, if you go through the economic survey this year, there is a page on this topic only, production linked initiative, right? So everything is about manufacturing. This PLI scheme is about manufacturing. But whether it is agriculture or industry or services, nothing can develop without infrastructure. So infrastructure is important. And we have one topic in your syllabus, right? Main syllabus, but they have changed the word there. The topic in your syllabus is investment models, right? But that is actually related with infrastructure. You know what is investment model? You know, India wants to grow very fast, and we want to increase our GDP to $5 trillion. Maybe it is delayed now for at least 1 year, maybe 2 years, but ultimately that is our national target today. Now from 2.7, 2.9 trillion dollars to $5 trillion, almost 40% increase. Just tell me one thing, that if you want to produce 40% more, can we do that with the same level of infrastructure that we have today? If you want to produce more, you need more energy. For transportation, you need better roads, more facilities by railways. If you produce more, you need to import and export more. For that, you need more capacity at the seaport. So now so many schemes are going on. We have Bharat Mala Yojana, we have Sagar Mala Yojana, and very frequently these words are coming in the newspaper. You know, I hope you understand the difference. What is the difference between Bharat Mala and Sagar Mala? Both are infrastructure related words. Bharat Mala is about road sector. We want to increase road connectivity. We want to increase the road capacity. We want to improve linkage, whether it is to port or whether it is to production areas. And Sagar Mala, it is about port development. India has about approximately 12 big ports, and we can increase the capacity, but that is not going to help. We want much more than that. Dehradun is suggesting Delhi Dehradun expressways. We have dozens of expressways going on. We are constructing that right now. So we need maybe many more seaports. But you know, for all this, what we need is money to be invested. So if we want to become $5 trillion economy, we have to accept the first fact, that is India for that level of production is deficient in infrastructure. Once you accept that reality, then you say that for that we need lot of money to be invested. But the government is capital deficient. The center and states combined, they don't have that much money, right? You know, we have a target, that is National Infrastructure Pipeline, NIP. What is the target there? More than 1 lakh crore of investment we are planning. Now the government, if all the resources are combined, center, states, even that much investment is not possible. So what to do? Invite private sector, and that generally we say that private sector here, when we use the popular word, it is called public private partnership. Actually the popular word was PPP, but I don't know why in the syllabus they just did not use that word. That was very convenient for students, but that was replaced by another word, that is investment models. So what is the exact meaning here? Because when you plan for public private partnership, it means some combination of public investment and private investment. So what will be the various arrangements of that? These are called models. Like one very popular model that we use in India, in road especially, is BOT, build, operate and transfer. It is just one model. So similarly we have many other models. So in fact when we say, they say investment model, basically they are talking about these different arrangements, right? In 2013 the syllabus was revised. After that, in 8 years, they asked the question in mains, because this is mains topic. In mains, 2 or 3 times they asked the question on this. And this is a very static type of topic, right? Maybe nothing is happening in the current year, but the questions are very basic in nature. What are the challenges we are facing in PPP? What are the measures that you suggest? Why India needs PPP? So these are very basic questions that they have asked, right? So one part of our syllabus is around the word growth. So you have to study everything that is relevant for agriculture, industry, services, related policies and schemes, and also whatever is happening regarding infrastructure. So, one part of your syllabus is this. Okay? I hope now you understand what I say, right? Now, growth is one. So, I always use this triangle because there are three major challenges that we face. So, one challenge is growth. Now, what is another challenge for economies like India? It may not be challenge for developed economies. That is called inclusive growth. So, when we grow, we have to make sure that this growth is inclusive. Now, I am getting some questions. So, like one question is how effective it will be privatization of banks. Now, this is something which I cannot take up now because this is related with banking sector reforms. So, when I come to that, so today I am going to just discuss just the basics of Indian economy. I will not enter into any topic, right? Because the first class is most important for beginners. So, I will definitely discuss this, but not today. So, what is inclusive growth? If we talk like a layman, we can say it very easily that the benefit of growth should reach every family, every household, every person. That means inclusive, means everybody included. That is the simplest version of it. But what is so challenging in this? That I say this is another aspect of the economic problem. So, why this is so challenging? You know, whenever any economy grows, there will definitely be imbalances, because imbalances, inequalities, whatever you say, that is built in the process of growth. For example, just imagine a new say factory is constructed. Obviously, this belongs to a capitalist, a person who invested money, but it is managed by some experts, we call them managers, but then the actual workers are there. Just tell me one thing, when this company grows, becomes bigger and bigger, earns profit every year, can we say that the benefit of this growth of the company is reaching to every person, every group of persons equally? It will never happen. The investor will get maximum, less than that the managers will get, the minimum the laborers will get. The same happens in the economy. When any economy grows, there are inequalities. Now, inequalities, as I say, it is built in the process of growth. If you just want to stop it here, you are actually going to stop growth. It will definitely be there. But yes, it is also true that we should not allow this inequality to increase beyond a point. And this inequality we see in various forms. Like one form is interpersonal inequality. Some people are rich, some are poor. This is interpersonal inequality at the individual level, right? So, we have to address the problem of poverty. It may be related to unemployment because everybody is not adequately employed, because the benefit of growth in the form of employment is not reaching to every family. So that is why in economics we give lot of importance to the topic that is poverty and unemployment. That is interpersonal. But the problem does not end here. We have also regional inequality. Why there is regional inequality? Because the whole country is getting the same type of attention from the government. We got freedom at the same time, right? Every state has a state government. We have the bureaucrats. But why some states are developed, others are not? Now, if you ask this question to a geography expert, maybe he says that it is because of availability of natural resources. But you know, this does not apply in this case. It is very interesting that in the case of India, the areas which have abundant natural resources are the most backward areas of the country, the eastern part of it. All the mineral resources belong to Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh, Odisha, right? And they are the most backward. And the minimum resources, the western part of it, that is more developed. It means there is something more, right? We need to address that. And you know why this has happened? You know, now this is, many people are talking about these issues, but when you read history, unfortunately the Indian historians, they followed the British historians, and they just tried to say one thing to us, that we were lucky that Britishers came here, they united us, they provided so many things, railways and post office and this and that. But I tell you that they did all this for their benefit. Ultimately, they looted $45 trillion over these years. There was colonial exploitation. They forced us to produce only raw material. India was denied a birth when there was, the whole world was witnessing second industrial revolution. The Europe developed, their whole industrialization was at the cost of the colonies. India was one of the major sufferers. They took the raw material from here, they converted that into goods and sent it back to India. This is colonial type exploitation. Unfortunately, we ignored this aspect of development, and this continued in India even after independence. You know, it is quite strange that the iron ore is in the eastern part of India. They convert it into steel there, but then this steel moves out of that area and the car is manufactured in Gurgaon. So where is more value addition? In Gurgaon. Obviously, the larger part of this value addition goes to some other state. I am not against any state. I am just giving you an example. There may be other examples. But we could not do that. Knowingly or unknowingly, it happened. This is a fact. But you may ask a question, then what is wrong in this? Ultimately, we are one country. If one state is producing steel, another state is producing car, what is wrong in it? I am not saying there is something wrong. But when this continues over a long period of time, you know what happens? One state is suffering from poverty, low per capita income, unemployment. So what the people will do? They will start migrating. Now initially they are welcomed. Why? Because they are supporting the growth of that state. Because the fast developing state needs workforce. They welcome you, please come. But then a point is raised when they start realizing that outsiders are taking away our jobs. And the day they realize it, now this becomes a reason for social tension. This reason becomes an issue of politics. Few days ago, Haryana, what Haryana said? 75% jobs we reserve for local. Now other states may also follow. The whole politics of Raj Thakre in Maharashtra revolves around this, abusing North Indians. Why? Bombay runs because of North Indians, right? But then it means that point has been reached. Then why these people are getting abused in Maharashtra, or they are denied a job, say in some other state? I'm not accusing any state. I'm accusing those states which failed to develop and they forced their people to migrate. So if today I belong to eastern Uttar Pradesh, people are migrating from Bihar, people are migrating. So it is because of underdevelopment of those areas. So this cannot continue forever. So this is called regional disparity, regional imbalance. That is to be addressed. This is another aspect of inclusive growth. Unfortunately, people are not talking about this, but I tell you that point will come where there will be a lot of focus on balanced regional development. In geography only they talk about balanced regional development, but this has not yet become a big economic issue. But this is time to address this issue, right? Then another aspect, social aspect. There same word is used. You know, we have huge gender disparity. Now, what is the problem? If I say from the economic point of view, you know, if we just think about a family, if a family wants to grow fast, it needs more income. More and more family members should work and earn. If you just imagine about a small family, husband, wife and 2 kids. Now if only husband is earning, per capita income is less. But if husband, wife both are earning, per capita income is more. Now same is true for the country. If we don't care for the role that the women can play for the country, obviously you are just saying that half of the population should simply sit at home and consume without earning. Obviously, our income will be less than the optimum. And if our income is less than the optimum, obviously we cannot grow fast. And there are many reasons of this, historical reasons are there, some customs and practices we followed, right? Like in conventional families, even today, not in all the areas, but in some areas, education beyond a point is denied, that okay, you are graduate enough, now sit at home and wait for your marriage, right? Why you will earn, your husband will earn. This is the mindset. But the good thing is that as far as this aspect is concerned, India is changing very fast, right? But for that, what is the bottleneck? It is education. We have huge disparity even today. Literacy rate among male and female population. That literacy gap is there. So when we move forward, first is to address these issues, literacy gap. Then we have to spread awareness, social awakening, the family mindset should change. Then only gradually we will improve upon this, right? But obviously, as I said, many things, some are related with sociology, some are related with geography. I will not discuss all those issues. I just raise this issue because tomorrow, if you get some question in prelims, are you writing an essay? In essay, you can't say that this is economic essay or social or geographic related essay. If suppose there is some essay, you get in the essay paper about inclusive growth. So there you must raise all those concerns, economic, social, geographical, everything. But as my topic is Indian economy, I will discuss only the economic aspect of inclusive growth. Now, other thing that you must realize is that many people believe that most of the good things that we have today, everything has come from the West. I strongly condemn this. This is not true. You know, like inclusive growth, that word was included for the first time in the title of 11th five-year plan that started in 2007. Can we say that before 2007, inclusive growth was not our issue? Or Indian policy makers, Indian thinkers, they never talked about this? It is absolutely incorrect if you believe that this inclusive concept is the Western concept. It is very much Indian concept. In fact, the world got this concept from India. Right? You know, even during the freedom struggle period, so many Indian leaders, including Mahatma Gandhi, Shyama Prasad Mukherjee, Nanaji Deshmukh, there is a long list of leaders, contemporary leaders, and they used a word. You know what was that word? Sarvodaya. And many of them are called Sarvodaya leaders. So even before independence, Sarvodaya word was there. If you read Gandhian literature, Sarvodaya is everywhere. Even in 1950, there was a plan prepared by Jayaprakash Narayan, the same person who led the agitation in 1975, Jayaprakash Narayan, right? Even if you go back, I say centuries ago, in Indian culture, we have so many things related with this Sarvodaya concept. Like we have a shloka in Sanskrit, Sarve bhavantu sukhina, sarve santu niramaya. What is this? Sarve bhavantu sukhina. Or in 1893, when a saint goes to America and says, brothers and sisters of America, Swami Vivekananda. So it is absolutely incorrect if somebody believes that inclusive concept is a Western concept. I say it is very much Indian concept. But obviously, this is not economics, so I will not elaborate much on this. But I am saying everything because I just want you to empower when you are writing answers in other areas. Especially my focus is on essay, right? Now, for a moment, if we believe that, okay, we are growing and we are also, to a certain extent, growing inclusively, or at least we have government policies in that direction, we face another set of problems. And you know, this is called stability. Stability. Now we have a statement from Priyanshu. Instead of reserving the few jobs for locals, the government should focus on creating more jobs. This is true. But how to do that, that is the problem, right? Theoretically it is correct. So now coming to this word, stability. You know, Reserve Bank of India declares or it publishes its bi-monthly monetary and credit policy. And every time there is some comment on the status of Indian economy. And if you read those things carefully, normally in newspapers they don't say much about these, they are just focusing on repo rate and reverse repo rate, that is the news headline. But if you read that document carefully, then you will find out that there are so many other things that RBI is saying every alternate month. And there is lot of use of the word stability. Like RBI says, no problem, economy is stable. If RBI says economy is stable, suppose you read that, how do you interpret that word? That is important. Stability of what? Or what do you understand economic stability? So I tell you, and this is in fact the core economics, right? When you say stability, stability has three sides or three types of stability. One is called monetary stability. Monetary stability. You know what is monetary stability? What is monetary stability? In simple words, you can say that inflation under control, right? And never say zero. Zero is a weakness, negative, because zero inflation rate means zero inflation, you understand, I hope. Inflation means the rate at which prices are rising, right? Every month we get the data. Inflation rate means the rate at which prices are rising is called inflation rate. Now tell me one thing, that if inflation rate in some month is zero, whether we should feel happy about it or not. Now as consumer you may feel happy, but if you have knowledge of economics, you will be worried. No price rise or zero price rise means the producers and sellers, they are scared about the demand for their goods and they are trying to sell at the minimum price and then only the price rise will be zero. And in any economy, if the price rise is zero, in fact it is an indication of recession. This is negative, right? In fact, for different countries, this normal is different, right? Like the developed economies, take the case of US, their 1% inflation rate may be normal. But we are emerging economies, our status is different. So officially, if I say officially, RBI has fixed 4% as the ideal inflation rate for India. But as it is not something that can be fixed, it is dynamic, it fluctuates. So it has also given a range. 4% plus minus 2% means 2 to 6. 4% is perfect. So, you may reach that perfect point, but cannot stay there for longer. It will be moving up or down. So, closer to 4% is the best, right. That is monetary stability. But what is behind all this is your syllabus. It is just an indicative word, monetary stability. But to understand the whole system, what you have to, so I am just telling you the topics, right. To understand this whole monetary system, you first should know what is money, topic number 1. That is just for the sake of conceptual clarity, they do not ask much questions from there. Money. Then what is inflation? And when I say inflation, everything related with inflation is included. What is inflation? What are the reasons of inflation? What are the types of inflation, right? How can we control inflation? How RBI controls inflation, right? How do we measure inflation? Everything is involved. But here I am just saying inflation, everything related with inflation. Then RBI, its functions and monetary policy, another topic. RBI, its functions and monetary policy. So, we have many RBI functions, because RBI was set up as a central bank, and every central bank has some functions to perform. It may be very basic function like issue of currency, but then it has also a function to control inflation, right. In between there are many functions, whether it is exchange rate stability, whether it is foreign exchange reserve. So, that all is to be studied under this topic. And then obviously, the last topic here is banking sector and reforms. Banking sector and reforms. Now, banking sector means you have to just have a broad idea about the history of banking in India. That can be summarized in 30 minutes, because that is not a big issue, that is wholly factual, right. For example, if I ask a very simple question, right, and that is very interesting also, which is the oldest bank in India? Can anybody tell? Yes, one answer I got, Punjab National Bank. Any other answer? Because this is not correct. Another one answer is SBI. Yes, what you are saying? No, no, don't hesitate. I will tell you the correct answer. I just want you people to get involved into this discussion, right? Because when you start using your brain, it is good for you, right? Allahabad Bank. So, I have got so many answers, right? You see, the very first bank was set up in 1770, and that was called Bank of Hindustan, but many experts, they do not count it, because it failed. It was not successful bank. After 36 years of this, in 1806, Bank of Bengal was set up. Right? I am getting so many answers, Bank of Hindustan, Central Bank, SBI, State Bank of Hyderabad, and right. So, Bank of Hindustan, many experts, they do not consider it as first bank because it failed. So, the first bank was set up as Bank of Bengal. Dehradun is saying Bank of Calcutta 1806, but make it Bank of Bengal. Right. After few years of this, during 1840s, two more banks were set up. One was Bank of Madras and another was Bank of Bombay. Actually, in history you read about these things that during British period, the first capital was Calcutta. So, later on they divided the whole country into three administrative areas, and these were called presidencies. So, these three were called presidency banks, and they were set up to facilitate government transactions. It was not meant for public. If by default somebody is getting the benefit, that is another issue, but the motive was to facilitate government transactions. Right. Like today we have treasuries. So, but later on in 1921, these three were merged, and then it was called Imperial Bank of India. Now, in all these cases, though there were the purpose was to facilitate the government transaction, there was involvement of the British government, but they were private investors. The actual owners were the private investors. Now, after independence, right, after independence, this Imperial Bank of India was nationalized, and that was in 1955, and then it was called State Bank of India. Right. So, out of the banks present today, SBI is the oldest bank, and in 2006 the SBI celebrated 200 years because they traced their origin to Bank of Bengal. Right. Now, but as I mentioned that this was meant for government transactions. First commercial bank in India was set up in 1881. That was Awadh Commercial Bank. That was a private bank. Awadh, you understand? That is a geographical area around Lucknow. My native place is also in that area, Awadh region, right? Known for Nawabs. So, that was the first commercial bank. Somebody said Punjab National Bank. That also appears in news, but why? It is the first bank set up by Indians. That is also answer for the, but question is different. PNB is also answer. The first bank set up by Indians, it is Punjab National Bank. Okay, got it? It was just an example, and these things are interesting, but I tell you less important for UPSC. That is why I say that history of banking in India, sometimes people give lot of importance to this, and that is because of something happening like merger of the banks recently, announcement by the FM that two public sector banks will be converted into private sector banks. So, lot of things are happening. So, whatever is current is only important for you. Do not try to remember everything, right, because that may be important for one day exams, not for your exam. In one day exam they ask such tricky questions that are very factual, right. But yes, recent development is important, privatization of banks, that may be important. But even more important is reforms, banking sector reforms. In fact, this privatization is part of banking sector reforms. And in fact, the policy was announced by this government. This year they said 2 banks will be privatized. But you know, if we you just go into this history, post-independence history of banking in India, at the time of independence, every bank was private in India. And the first bank that was nationalized was SBI in 55. After that, in 1962, eight banks were nationalized and they were called subsidiary banks of SBI. Bank of Saurashtra, Bank of Indore, Bank of Bikaner and Jaipur, Bank of Patiala, Bank of Indore, all these type of, they were all. Later on, there was one merger, so it was SBI plus one. Then in 69, 14 banks were nationalized. In 80, 6 more banks were nationalized. So at one point, we had 27, 28 public sector banks. But during 1990s, and even before that, there were some recommendations. And the strongest recommendation comes from the most important committee, that was Narsingham Committee. And every government after that followed the recommendations of Narsingham Committee. And this committee was appointed 2 times. First in 1991, and that was financial sector reforms. The same committee was appointed in 1998, that was banking sector reforms. And if you go and read what was the recommendation of Narsingham Committee, it very clearly says that we don't need more than 24 banks. We need just 7, 8 strong banks. And that is why whenever it was possible, it was feasible, because when I say feasible, it does not mean economic feasibility only, it also means political feasibility. Because there were many years during this period when we had coalition governments at the center, and when any party, we have 2 big parties, Congress and BJP, when any of the 2, they are heading coalition government, and you know Atal Bihari Vajpayee, 98 to 2004, he was heading a coalition of more than 20 parties and all different views. Obviously, it was not politically feasible to go for such type of reforms. Then UPA 1, UPA 2, again the same problem they faced. UPA 1 was dependent on left parties for their survival. Obviously, it was out of question because left parties are always opposed to these type of reforms. In UPA 2, they had some freedom, but they did not do that, maybe because there was no political consensus. But now, as after many years, there is a government with majority, so at least they have the opportunity to implement the reforms suggested by some very important committee 20-25 years ago. So it is, in fact, in my view, it is a delayed thing that they had done. It is already much delayed. There may be many views on this. I will not enter into that right now. But I am just telling you the facts. Opinion is something different, right? And when there is opinion about anything, everybody has complete freedom. And for everything that we do, we have positive side and negative side, because there is nothing perfect. No policy is perfect, right? So in every policy, there may be good things and bad things, and that is open to criticism. But as UPSC aspirants, what I expect from you, You should not go by opinions. You should be analytical in your approach. Even if you don't have any idea which stand to take, the best policy is read two different articles, one in favor, another is against. Just pick up 3-4 points in favor and 3-4 points against, and your task is over. And in your exam, you have to just mention that these are good things and these are bad things, right? Don't try to be judgmental, right? I tell you last year what happened. There was a student and he was frequently showing me the answers, right? After the class, he was. So there was merger of bank, that issue was going on, and he came to me with an answer. So I just read the whole thing, and I said, "Ki you read the Hindu article and picked up the points from there only." So he was surprised. Sir, how do you know? I said, because all your points are negative. Because Hindu is one newspaper that will never appreciate any move of the government. That is their editorial policy. I am not saying whether their criticism is right or wrong, but I am just telling you about their editorial policy. So I suggested him that, okay, now you do one thing. Today you read Indian Express, and I want 4 more points, but they should be positive. Next day he came to me with 4 positive points. I said, see, now you have 4 negative points and 4 positive points. Now just note it down, forget the topic, move forward. Right? You have to be very practical when you prepare for this exam, right? Don't get emotionally involved into the topics, into the issues, right? Because many students, they do like that, and they are unnecessarily wasting time, right? Because you cannot change the policy of the government. You just see what is good, what is bad, that's it. Now move to the next topic, because there are so many topics you have to prepare. So that was just an example I wanted to quote. When we move forward, banking reforms, you know, the most important reform that we have to study, this is one type of reform. And in fact, you know what has happened, there was first phase, first era, when every private thing was nationalized, that continued for 30 years. 1950 to 80, everything was nationalized. Today you see LIC, GIC, Coal India Limited, steel plants and what not. Everything was nationalized. Now this is just reversal of the trend because of the globalization, economic reforms, whatever you say. So 1991 onwards, so the graph was like this and now it is like this. Now those who are stuck there in the first phase itself, overloaded with this idea of socialism, they are in problem, because they are not able to understand reform, why we need it. But yes, these are different phases of the economy. There was a time when nationalization was important, the whole country supported that. Now reforms are required, so we need to support that. But now when we are doing all this, obviously more freedom means more risk, right? When the government controls everything tightly, things are different. When I say government here, I mean RBI. But when you just give the freedom to the private operators, whether it is bank or any company or something else, obviously many of them may try to misuse that freedom. They may enter into risk zone that is not advisable. So RBI has a mechanism to control all this. And this whole mechanism that we have developed is known as Basel accounting system, BASEL, right. And what is Basel accounting system? There is an international organization that is called BIS. BIS, I'll write it here. Actually, BIS is now I have got a request. What is your approach for economy? I mean, which part of economy you take first? If you tell us that, then it would be easy for us to read it from NCERT. Also suggest relevant books. I am a beginner. So, if you are a beginner, you first read Indian Economic Development, and that is NCERT. After that, you wait for the class. When the classes are over, then only you should be going for other books. And I tell you frankly that there are not many books for economics UPSC. There are some popular books, but they are not complete for this, right. I will not take names of the author, that is not appropriate, but there are some books which are popular, but they are just like dictionaries of words, and ultimately you do not reach anywhere. You may feel that you know a lot of economics after reading those books, but ultimately when you really need the information, the knowledge, that book is not going to support you. I tell you the better method to prepare economics, right, and that is the easiest way. Suppose you are reading an article, okay, how to prepare words, because I have at least 7-8 dictionaries of economics with me, because I am basically science graduate, BSc Physics, Chemistry, Maths, but after that I joined MA Economics, and then I tell you it was too difficult for me. I was not able to understand anything. I was worse than you people, right, because the teachers, they were coming, they were just delivering lectures, considering that I am also one of the economics graduates, but I was BSc Science. So, I started reading books of graduation first, then I came to MA previous. So, I read lot of books the very first year, then somehow I was comfortable. But I tell you, because there was no guide, nobody to guide me, I tell you a very simple way. One thing, that all the basic things I have given in that book Wizard, right. All the basic things are there, for that you need not go anywhere else. But now suppose you get something new, you are reading an article, you get some word there, because economics is a very dynamic subject and the people are creating new words. You just Google search that word and just read one paragraph, you will understand what is this, and then just apply that in the context in which you read that word. That is enough for your exam, and that is the easiest way to do this. Okay? Do not try to read too much, because I know that GS is so vast, and if you are preparing for a few months, so you may be feeling frustrated, because there is no end visible, right. You are working hard, still there is no end visible. So, I just want to reduce your burden, that is why I am saying this. Otherwise, it is the easiest thing for me to suggest couple of books, but then it is not in your interest, right. So, read Wizard, read NCERT, attend all the economy classes, and just after that focus on the newspaper. If you get something new, just Google search and read from there, then no other book is required. So, coming back to reforms, I was talking about Basel system. Actually, Basel is a place in Switzerland. right? It is very interesting. So, the institution is BIS, Bank for International Settlement, Bank for International Settlement, BIS, and it is also known as Bank of the Central Banks. Like we say, na, RBI is Bank of the Banks. So, it is Bank of the Central Banks, it is an international institution, and BIS is always doing research and development, various aspects of banking, accounting, all that they do, and from time to time they come up with suggestions. Obviously, these suggestions are adopted by the member countries and their central banks. So, there was a complete package of suggestions that was called Basel Accord. Basel, BAS. So, why it is called Basel? Because it is the place where BIS is located. So, that became Basel Accord, and under the Basel Accord various reforms that were suggested. The two very important words that will be discussed in the class, one is NPA, non-performing assets, and another is capital adequacy ratio, CAR. NPA, non-performing assets, and another word is capital adequacy ratio. The whole banking sector reform revolves around these two words. You know, NPA is a very common word today. Banks are becoming sick or weak. Why? Because their non-performing assets are rising. What is CAR? Capital adequacy, whether their capital is sufficient enough to absorb the losses or not, that is called capital adequacy. So, conceptually it is so simple, but we have to enter into the details of it, how NPA is defined, what is happening in Indian banking system, right? How the CAR is applied, right? Why there is a need to increase CAR, if capital is not enough, what the government is doing, what the RBI is suggesting to the government, right? So, that becomes policy. So, first part is the concept of this and then the policy. So, the concept has been given by BIS, it is being implemented as a policy by the RBI. Now, in the same context, in this present budget speech, there was a discussion or rather use of the word bad banks. So, what is bad bank? Bad bank is just, if you just Google search, you will get the answer in few sentences, it is in there. Bad banks are actually the financial institutions which purchase the NPAs from the banks. In simplest words, you can say this. Like you say that we have whatever waste we generate at homes, some waste is taken away daily by somebody from the corporation, but there is some other waste that we sell at very low rate to somebody. He will use it, convert it into some other form and sell it for some price, like we are just selling the old newspapers and magazines. Why somebody is buying it? Because he knows that it can be converted into some other useful form, right? Similarly, in Hindi we call it kabadi, right? Those from Hindi belt will understand. So, bad banks are kabadis in the banking sector. So, whenever, what is the kabad? The waste.